hope everyone is doing well. Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be color grading on Caffeine episode 2. And for this specific video, the energy drink of choice that I was having for this music video color grading session was a Monster energy drink. And the specific flavor that I did have was the Ultra Sunrise. It is an orange can, so go ahead and check out that caffeine drink. It's very good. It did help me get through this color grading session. So for this video, I'm going to be showing how I colored a most recent music video titled Let's Go Get It from the artist Jab. You can check out the official music video as well as the behind the scenes breakdown for this music video by clicking the I in the right hand corner or clicking the links in the description down below. So let's go ahead and take a look at the before and after color grade clips we're going to be going over today. So for this color grading tutorial, I'll be showing how I colored each main performance scene within this actual music video. I'm not going to go over every single scene again because I did use a copy and paste method after setting these initial color grading scenes for these performance scenes. So we're just going to go over the performance scenes for each shot within this actual music video. Now guys, I did shoot this music video on the GH5 and all of the scenes were recorded in Vlog, both performance and B-roll scenes. Again, the workflow I did use for exposing and coloring in post was for the GH Alex LUT. And you can check out the video I did make showing what this LUT is and how to best utilize it for your GH5 by clicking the links down in the description. Now let's go ahead and hop into the first clip, which was the first performance with Jab in the trap house. And also guys, for this color grading tutorial, I'm going to go over the first performance scene, setting up and showing you how to set up the node layout template, and then we'll copy and paste the node layout template to every single one of the other performance scenes. But every single thing from the noise reduction all the way to the white balance, the two conversions setup for the GH Alex LUT was the same for every single performance scene for this music video. So after I covered this on the first performance scene, the only thing I'm going to be covering on the rest of the performance scenes was how I set the luminance values, the coloring, the skin, and the sharpening for the rest of the performance scenes. But everything else from the noise reduction, white balance, and setting up the two conversions is all the same method and same setup for every single performance scene that I did color grade in this. So I'm only going to go over this in detail in the first one, and then everything else, like I said, I'm going to be just showing the luminance, the color, the skin, and the sharpening. So let's go ahead and get into the first performance scene. So guys, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and clear this out. And we're going to create the new nodes by doing Option S. This will be our noise reduction. We're going to do another node, Option S. This will be for the white balance. The next two nodes is going to be for the two conversions. And then we're going to do a new node, which is going to be our layer mixer. So the first thing you want to do is do Option S. And then from there, you're going to do Option L, which will create the layer mixer. You'll come over to the layer mixer button right here and right click and do composite mode and select hue. And then from there, we're going to create a new node, which will be for the color, another node for skin, and the last node, which will be for sharpening. Now I'm going to label these real quick and then I'll check back in with you all. So now that we have all of our nodes set up and labeled, let's go ahead and get into the process. So the first thing we're going to do is do our noise reduction. So we're going to come down here and click on the motion effects, and we're going to select frames, and I'm going to do one frame. I'm going to leave the type and the range as is. I'm going to come down to the threshold and change the lumina and chroma to 7. Excuse me, not 6 or 7. It's going to be set at 5. And I'm going to change the motion to 11. I'm going to leave the blend at 0. I'm going to leave the spatial noise reduction as is. And I'm going to come down to the paperclip on the spatial threshold and deselect this. And I'm going to change the chroma to 7 and leave the luma at 0 and leave the blend at 0 as well. And everything on the motion blur tab is going to stay as is. Let's move on to the white balance next. Now for the white balance, what you're going to do is come over to your color wheels, and you're going to select the eyedropper tool and then find a white spot in the image. So for this one, what I did was I actually zoomed in and picked this white section of the window. So again, make sure you have your eyedropper tool selected in your color wheels, and I hit this button right here, and this set our white balance set up for the image. Now the next thing we're going to do is set our conversions for the GH Alex LUT. The first conversion is going to be putting the image into the GH Alex LUT log C, which is going to be preparing it for the RE log C to Rec 709 conversion colorway. So let's go ahead and do that by going to conversion 1 and right clicking and going down to your LUTs, going to 3D LUT, And we're going to be going to color conversions, 65x, and doing GH Alex Daylight Log C. And then from there, we're going to go to conversion 2. Again, go to LUTs, 3D LUT, and we're going to find the Alexa V3 Log C to Rec 709. And now this set up our initial colorway for the music video as far as doing the noise reduction, the white balance, and the 2 conversions. So guys, now that we've done this whole process, now we can move on to setting our luminance values. So we're going to come over to the luminance, and again, make sure you have the top selected, not the bottom. We're going to look at our waveforms, and we're going to come over to our curves, and we're going to mess with the luminance values from the curve section. Again, you want to make sure that you only have the Y selected. You don't want RGB selected. You just want the Y, which is going to be for your luminance. If you did RG and B, that's going to mess with the colorways in the actual shot. So from here, what I see is I want to bring this image actually down to where this line setup is. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to the left-hand side and bring our blacks and shadows down. And I want to bring it just a tiny bit below the actual line. Some of the things in the image will be below the line, but a majority of it is not. And then from here, I see that the highlights are a little bit too high up, so I want to bring this actually down to around the 896 line. So I'm going to bring this right till it teeters on the actual 896 line. And then now this is what we're going to do as far as setting our luminance values. I am happy with that. And we can now move on to the color option. So we can go ahead and click the color node. And from here, what I want to do is I want to set our actual black levels by going over to the color wheel again. And from here, you're going to go to lift, and you're going to select this, which will do the pick a black point, and it will set the auto black levels and shadows. So what I want to do is I want to find a piece of equipment or something in this image that I can go ahead and use as a black reference. So what I'm going to do is zoom in, and for this image, what I did was I actually found something that was underneath the bed that was pure black. So you'll go to your lift and click this pick point, and then you'll go ahead and click right there. And now what it's done, let's look at the before and after. It's changed up some of those greens. Now it's a little bit more warmth into it. It's actually taking a little bit of the tint as far as the green tint in and giving it more of a warm look in the red and orange. So looking at our waveform, I actually want to bring up these black and shadows a little bit. Just a tiny bit, maybe about 1.1 or 0.2. Right about there. I like that right there. So moving on from here, we can actually go ahead and set our skin tones. And again, doing our skin tones, what we want to do is come over to the eyedropper tool, select the bullseye right here, and we want to zoom in on his face and set the skin tones based off of his face. Again, make sure you have the bullseye selected. We'll click right here. And then from here, what we're going to do is just set our picker window, and we're going to make sure that we just have only the spot on his skin actually selected for the window. So now that we've set our picker window up, let's go ahead and deselect this real quick, and let's make sure that our skin tones are selected correctly. Let's go ahead and zoom back out a tiny bit and come over to our eyedropper tool. And let's zoom out again. Zoom in up to his face. I think I can get a little bit more of his actually deselect some of it. Let's go ahead and try to get his hair out of this shot. Oh yeah, that's better. Now let's use the feather window, the addition feather window, and click back over here on this plus to get a little bit more of his skin. All right, that's good for right now. Let's go back to the picker window and make sure only this point on his skin is selected. And we'll come over to our waveform and change it from waveform to the vector scope. And now what I want to do is expand this window and come over to our color wheels. And you adjust the skin tones again by using the offset on the primary wheels. And let's move this line. I don't know if you all can see well. I'll try to zoom in on this, but it is actually to the left a tiny bit. So what I want to do is move the offset over to the right, and now it is a little bit to the right, but it's basically on the actual skin tone line. So I want to go ahead and get out of this and deselect the magic wand and turn off our picker window. And this is the before. You see it's a little bit too green. And now after. Before, after. And let's zoom back out. And now we have our skin tone set. And now we can move on to the last step, which is our sharpening. Let's go to our sharpen and we'll come over to the blur. And again, for the radius, you want to bring it down if you want to add sharpening, or you go up if you want to add a blur effect. I never go below 0.47. For this one, I went down to 0.48. And now this is how I color corrected the first performance scene for this music video. Let's go ahead and check out the before and check out the after. Again, before, after. Now guys, when it comes to using the GH Alex LUT and the actual bass node template setup, everything that I did for the performance scenes as far as the noise reduction, the white balance, and setting up the 2 conversions was the same in every single shot. The only thing that changes from each shot is obviously setting up your luminance waveform values, your colorway, the skin, and the sharpening. So the only things that changed from shot to shot again was the luminance, the color, the skin, and the sharpening. So for the rest of the scenes, I'm already going to apply the noise reduction, the white balance, and the 2 conversions. If you need to refer back to how to do this, just check out how I color graded this first performance scene. But moving on, the only thing we're going to be looking at for the rest of the 4 shots is how I changed the luminance values, the color, the skin, and the sharpening. So guys, now that we're on to the next performance scene for the color grading, this was Jab doing his performance scene in the car driving around Atlanta. Now for the white balance point, I did use his white shirt again, but the noise reduction and the 2 conversions was the same. So let's move on to the luminance values. So we're gonna go ahead and click this top button, which is for the luminance, and we'll click this waveform button right here to bring our scopes back up. We want to change it from vector scope to waveform, and then we're gonna come over to our curves. Again, make sure you have only the Y selected, not R, G, and B. And looking at this through the waveform, I want to bring down my blacks and my shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and click this point right here and bring it down to the right to right about there. So this is going to stay the same. I don't want to bring this up. Just for reference, if I did bring this up, it's not going to look realistic. So let's bring it back. And let's leave it as is and move on to our color and set our black point. So we're going to go over to the color wheels and go to lift and do our black pick point. And for this one, the option that I did was I used this ridge on the actual car. So let's go ahead and click right there. And as you can see now, it's actually changed it to again bring more warmth and orange, reddish, and taking away some of the greens in the shot. Let's go ahead and look at the before and after. And the only thing I want to do with this is I want to actually bring up the blacks a little bit. It's a little bit too dark and crushed, so let's bring it up a tiny bit, right about there. So I don't want to change anything with the highlights or the gain, so I'm going to leave that as is, and we can move on to our skin tones now. So let's go ahead and go to the skin node, and we're going to come to the eyedropper and make sure you have the bullseye selected, and we're going to select his skin and click the magic wand. And let's go ahead and get a little bit more of his skin involved, right about there. Let's go over to our hue and expand this out a little bit to get more of his skin. All right, now let's deselect this magic wand and do our circle picker window. And now that we have the circle small enough on his actual skin, what we can do now is go back to the magic wand and actually select it again. And that's going to select just the circle for his skin. We'll come back to waveform and go to vector scope and expand this out. And as you can see, the actual line, it's actually a little bit to the right of the line, so I could leave it there if I wanted to, but I want to bring it to the left just to kind of hover over the skin tone line just a little bit closer. So we go to our color wheels, come over to offset, and move this to the left until it's basically directly on the skin tone line, just hovering to the right a little bit. It's not a major adjustment. Let's go ahead and close out of this and deselect this magic wand, zoom out so we can actually see his whole face, and then we're going to come over to the picker window and deselect the picker window. It's not a huge difference probably to the eye, but it is if you checked again your scopes. So now that we have our skin tone set, we can go and do the last step, which is going to be the sharpening. So let's come over to the sharpen and come over to our blur tab, and then we're going to take the radius down from 0.50 to 0.48. And then this is the second performance scene, so let's go ahead and check out the before. After, before, after. Let's move on to the next performance shot. So guys, this was the next performance scene, and this was at the warehouse location in the actual dungeon setup. So I already do have the noise reduction, the white balance, and the 2 conversions set up for this actual performance scene color grade. Let's move on to the luminance. So now that we have the luminance selected, again, make sure you have the top selected, not the bottom. We're going to make sure that we have our waveform scopes brought up and that we're in the curve selection. And again, make sure you have Y only selected, not R, G, or B. And obviously looking at this waveform, what I want to do is I want to bring my blacks and my shadows down. So I'm going to come over here to this line and bring this down to the right, to right about there. And I'm going to leave the highlights as is. I'm not going to bring them up or down. I like it where it is. And the skin tones and the mids are actually already where I want them. So moving on from here, I'm going to go into the colorway and set the black point. So again, we have our color node selected. We're going to come over to the color wheel and select the lift option, the pick black point. And for this one, what I did was I actually chose to click on this chain link fence or whatever it is for the black point reference. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and then I'm going to bring this up to right about there. And again, I'm not going to mess with the highlights or the gain. So moving on, let's go ahead and set the skin tones. Again, we're going to go ahead and set our skin tone reference by clicking on his skin. Click right here and select the magic wand. And then from here, we're going to deselect this magic wand. And now we're going to do the circle window. And now that we have our power window small enough to go directly on his skin, we're going to zoom back out and zoom back in. And now we're going to go back to the magic wand and actually select that. And then we're going to come over here to our vector scope. We're going to come over to our color wheels and get our skin tones correct. I'm going to maximize this actual wheel. And as you can see, it's actually to the left. So we want to bring over the offset to the right. And right about there. And we're going to zoom out, turn off the magic wand, and deselect the power window. And again, don't check out this part of his face because this actually was coming from the aperture light. So we're not going to set the skin tones based off of this because this is the purple hue. We're just going off of this part right here, which is his actual natural skin tone. So now that we have the actual skin tone select and set up, we're going to come over and add the sharpening. And again, we're going to come down to the blur tab and change the radius from 0.50 to 0.48. And then guys, let's move on to the last performance scene for this music video, which was Jab inside of the actual car. So guys, now that we're on the final performance scene, which was Jab inside of the car, and we've already applied the noise reduction, the white balance, and the 2 conversions, let's look at what the before process was before we added the noise reduction, the white balance, and the 2 conversions. So this is the before, and this is the after. Again, the before and after. So let's go ahead and set our luminance values. We're going to make sure that the luminance node is selected and that our waveform is brought up. And we're going to come over to the curves and again make sure Y is there, not R, G, or B. And looking at this image, what I want to do is just bring down the blacks and the shadows again a little bit. It's giving too much of a fade look right now. I don't want that. So I'm going to bring down this to the right about there before it becomes crushed. So from here, I'm going to bring down the highlights just a tiny bit so it gets to that 896 line. And bring it up a little bit and right there. Now that we have our luminance value set, we can go over to the color tab and select, again, setting our black point. We're going to come over here to our color wheels, come over to lift, click this tab button right here. And for this option, what I did was I chose to select the actual tires in the image. And as you can see, this brought this dramatically down. But what I will do is come over to the lift wheel right here and bring this up to right about there. And now moving on from here, we can go ahead and set our skin tones by coming over to the skin node tab, coming over to our eyedropper tool, making sure the bullseye selected, zooming in on his face, clicking his skin tones. Let's go ahead and do the magic wand. And that's actually enough of his skin set that we can do a reference point. So let's get our picker window. And now that we just have the circle directly on his skin, we can go ahead and reselect the magic wand, come over to waveform and change that to vector scope. Let's bring this up so you all can see it, and come over to our color wheels and let's move this to see where the actual line is. And let's move it to the left a tiny bit. Now it is directly on the skin tone line. We can go ahead and X out of this, and we can deselect the magic wand, and we can turn off the power window. And again, this was just a subtle change. It wasn't anything drastic, but we do want to make sure that we have our skin tone set correctly. And now the last thing we can do is we can move over to sharpening. And again, sharpening, you come over to the blur tab, and I selected this at 0.48. So now let's go ahead and check out the before of this image. This is the before. Let's go ahead and check out the after, before, and after. And this is how I color graded the last performance scene for this music video. So guys, that's gonna be it for this video. If you did find this content helpful, please be sure to like and comment down below in this video, and share this video to any other creators who will find this helpful. Also, to everyone currently not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and join the family and hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you can stay up to date with all the content that is releasing on this channel. See you all guys next video.